the Feds are going to keep the interest rates up there because they're trying to cool down
Right.
this out of control economy.
Yep.
So it's going to keep the rates up there. As long as they keep the rates up there, it's bringing the markets literally to a halt.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out once again on the podcast here. I have a great guest coming up. Can't wait to introduce him. But first, I want to introduce you to two great companies. One of them being OREP Insurance. OREP, of course, is my E&O of choice. And I've chosen it for many years and will continue to choose it because, well, they've got the best coverage, the best prices. Check them out. Go to orep.org. That's OREP.org. And a la mode. Of course, is the software of choice for me and thousands, tens of thousands of appraisers across the nation. Find out more at alamode.com or 800-ALA-MODE. Well, folks, I want to welcome to the program my good friend, Mr. Greg Stevens. Greg, welcome to the program, my friend. Before I read your bio, I just want to say thank you for coming on, man.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. And thank you for inviting me.
Well, trust me, the pleasure is all mine and our listeners. It's always good to hear from you. It comes without saying, Greg, most people know who you are, but briefly, for those maybe one or two out there that don't, Greg is a recognized subject matter expert in appraisal regulations and standards. His 45-plus year career includes owning and managing a 5-office regional appraisal firm in Northern California for 24 years, 10 years in financial institution valuation, QC, and governance. Managing pre- and post-closing review teams, monitoring state and federal appraisal-related legislation, and USPAP subject matter expert. I think that's key. We might get into that a little bit today. 11 years as a chief appraiser, chief compliance officer for a national appraisal firm. Mr. Stevens' professional credentials include certified general appraiser, SRA, AIRRS designations from the Appraisal Institute, AQB certified USPAP instructor through the Appraisal Foundation, CDEI certification, distance education instructor through the International Distance Education Certification Center. For over 24 years, he has been providing quality education, continuing education courses, seminars across the country through his seminar company, Appraisal Seminars, the Appraisal Institute, several colleagues, and for Metro West national staff and clients. He's also a frequent speaker at national conferences. That's, of course, where I met him, for professional organizations around the country, and was voted the CRN 2013 Valuation Visionary for lifelong contributions for the industry. And Greg, I really could go on and on. You have done, I mean, honestly, there's like a handful of people in this industry that I can say that are on your level of experience and expertise, of education and knowledge. So it's just an honor to have you here, my friend.
Well, thank you, Dustin. I appreciate that.
Let's start with the elephant in the room, shall we? What the heck is going on with the markets right now, my friend?
The markets are going crazy, Dustin. If you look at, we're currently now, just to give you an idea, we're currently now at 9% interest inflation rates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Fed has targeted 2%. So they have been increasing periodically the basis points. Even yesterday, the Federal Reserve increased interest rates by another 75 basis points. So that's the 6th increase this year. So the corresponding impact to those rates has been significant.
Right.
To give you an idea, as of today, 30-year fixed interest rates are between 7.2 and 7.63%.
Wow.
15-year fixed is at 6.43 to 6.69. So contrast that to the end of 2021 when they were 2.96%. So why is this important to appraisers? Look no further than the impact that it's going to have on potential home buyers and anybody thinking about refinancing a loan.
Right.
Here's a perfect example. As of yesterday, the average home price nationwide was $384,800 to $391, depending upon what survey you use. Someone purchasing a home in 2021 at 3%, their monthly PITI was $1,674.
Okay.
At today's 7% rate, that same purchase price, the PITIA is $2,400.
Oh my gosh.
$7.
Now I went to public schools, but $800 more a month is what sticks in my head. Am I right?
Just under 800. It's 45% increase in less than a year.
Wow.
So I mean it's staggering, and it's had a devastating effect on the markets. I mean, think about new construction. You're looking at last year having a $1,700 payment. Now you're looking at almost $2,500. The amount of income that is required to meet that and qualify for that loan, it's just priced so many people out of the market, both for new home purchases, but as well as for refi.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've had low interest rate, below 3% for several years. So we have all of those people that have refi. So now at a 6 or 7%, there's no incentive for them to refi.
Right.
And so we're going to be seeing that for an extended period of time, well through the fourth quarter of this year,
mm-hmm.
and well into 2023. In the NBA, we know that the Feds are going to keep the interest rates up there because they're trying to cool down this out of control economy.
Yep.
So it's going to keep the rates up there. As long as they keep the rates up there, it's bringing the markets literally to a halt. And the NBA estimates that perhaps by the end of the year, we'll be down into the 5.4% range.
You're talking about the end of next year, just to be clear, not this year, the end of next year, 2023.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so at that point, we're still well above the 3% that people were refining and buying at.
Right.
So we're seeing a negative effect going well into 2023 and even beyond.
Mm-hmm. Now, as the appraiser coach, I've been talking to a lot of my clients about how to pivot and what to do with their businesses, because there's still valuation work going on there. But I want to talk about lender work, specifically about Fannie Mae forms. Let's talk the 1004. In the 1004, Greg, as you know, there are basically three choices when it talks about the summary of the market. Now, obviously, there's a whole lot we can do in our work files and a whole lot we can do with standard one, with our report development. But as far as reporting goes, we got three choices. We got decreasing, we got stable, and we've got increasing. I talked to somebody literally 30 minutes before I got on this interview with you, Greg, one of my clients, who said that they have been in business as an appraiser since they've been in business, and I don't remember how long they've been in business, but from day one until currently, like within the last couple of months, they have never marked anything but increasing. That's how long they've been in business. Like that's all they've been used to. So talk to me, Greg, about the pressure that appraisers feel and what is our responsibility when it comes to those three boxes?
Well, USPAP requires that appraisers analyze economic supply, demand, and market trends. They have to do that. That's part of standard one development. So being aware of what these trends are, and yes, there is going to be pressure, but this is nothing new. I mean, I have friends that when the markets turned in the past, in the 1980s and 1990s, they were checking declining, and they literally saw their practices vanish.
Yeah.
Because no one was ordering them. They were finding appraisers that would check the stable box.
Right.
And so it was really unfortunate, but this is not something new. But and to your point, we've had, at least here in my market, in the DFW area, from 2012 to 2022, it was nothing but upward market trending. Mm-hmm. We were starting to make positive time adjustments even in June of 2012. And it just went on continuously. And so, I mean, this is a market like we've never experienced before for many appraisers. But when they are looking at the market data, and the market data is clearly indicating that there is a downward market trend, they need to be putting that into their appraisal report. Right. And they need to be able to support that. In other words, we're going to need to support that downward adjustment, the declining adjustment, as much, if not more, than when we were supporting the positive adjustment. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It all comes down to support, doesn't it? It all comes down to when you click that box, if you're going to get kickback or feedback in a nice way from your clients, the best, in my opinion, the best defense for that is to show your numbers, right? The numbers don't lie.
Exactly. So we have our local market data, but we can also supplement our appraisal reports with published data.
Hmm.
And so a good example would be the American Enterprise Institute. They publish very comprehensive charts on trending. I mean, they have millions of loans that they're running this data through. And so like on October 24th, just recently, the AEI published a report. It was entitled Housing's Stunning Downfall in One Chart. Prices have plunged in 51 of these 60 cities, and there's much further to fall.
Wow.
And what this report showed is that San Jose, California, for instance, which has experienced some of the highest rate increases, is also number one. They're down 10%.
Okay.
San Francisco is down 8.5%. So we go all the way down to Detroit, which was at a minus 0.3%. So they've hardly seen any change, right? And so what this report reveals is that those markets that have been experiencing the highest upward movement over the last couple of years are also those that are falling the fastest. And so appraisers really need to be pay attention to that, especially in those markets like Vegas, Nevada, Arizona. You know, these have all seen significant upward market trends. And they were also, Dustin, they were also the markets that saw the big implosions when the market crashed in 2008 due to the investor buildup. And so we do have markets that have had a lot of investor activity, and that might pull back. But a lot of what we've seen today is simply homeowners that were having to pay these exorbitant increasing prices, and now they're just going to sit on. And we've seen that. I've seen that, you know, when I was in Silicon Valley, I was there at the dot-com boom.
Okay.
So 1999, 2000, it was very common for a property to go on the market and for there to be 30 offers on that property. Wow. And there would be a bidding war.
Yeah.
And so Allstate, their attorneys actually reached out to their agents and said, hey, you have to stop this, because what was happening is you would have somebody go into a room where they would have 30 agents, and they would say, we will top any other offer in the room, regardless of what it is, right?
Yeah.
And the attorneys would go, no, that is a lawsuit just waiting to happen.
Right.
That's how bad it got. And so this is not something new, but it is certainly something that we need to be paying attention to. And you know, just as soon as that market stabilized, then all of those upward trends immediately began going down. So we saw it, 20 years ago, and we're seeing it. We'll be seeing it now in 22 and 23, where appraisers who have been accustomed to trying to keep up with the upward adjustments are now going to have to be analyzing and seeing that there is that shift. And to be aware that we also have the buyer-seller psychology, and I've seen it time after time. So you have an upward trending market, you see it stabilizing, the market is starting to turn, but sellers are in denial. So if their neighbor's house sold for $600,000, they are adamant that their house is going to be worth $600,000.
Right. I mean, it's comparable, right?
Yep. And so, it's interesting because I taught appraisal for about 5 straight years in one of the colleges, and I actually had the class complete a narrative appraisal as part of their assignment. And so, and I saw some incredible appraisal reports.
What a great experience.
The thing that I found at the end of it all is that these students who either owned a home or were living in their parents' home, or we were using one of their relatives' homes, they were neighbors. They knew their neighbors. And so invariably, the value conclusion that these students would come up with would be above whatever their neighbors' home sold for.
Right.
I mean, that's just
because they own the castle, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we're going to start to see that now, where the markets are actually turning. We're going to see inventories build. We're going to see the sale price to list price ratios going from over 100% to under 100%. But those sellers are going to be resistant. And so we're going to see a period where the market is actually flat, even though we're seeing this increase in those numbers, in those typical indicators. And it won't be until the sellers either say, look, I don't have to sell. I'm just going to take it off the market.
Mm-hmm.
They have to sell, and they're going to have to lower the price in order to get a competitive market stimulated for that product. And then we'll start to see them coming down.
We're talking with Mr. Greg Stevens. Greg, when we get back, I want to talk about this term market expert, real estate market expert, and what an appraiser truly is. When first, want to pause here though, and talk a little bit about the sponsors here. First of all, Alamode. Alamode, of course, is it's the leader. It's the world leader in appraisal writing software. Now, that might be off-putting to some. They might say, well, they're too big. I don't want to deal with the big guys. Well, guess what gets them there, folks? It's the value that they bring to the table. And I can tell you the internal workings of Alamode and what it allows me to do in the field and at my desktop, and the separation of the assembly line, all work simultaneously with this great software. Check them out. Go to alamode.com, or you can call them, pick up the phone and call them at 800-ALAMODE. OREP is my, of choice. And I've been with a lot of companies over the years, folks. I've been in business 27 years. And I think it's been, about 5-6 years that I've been with OREP. Been very, very pleased with the service that they have provided. I've used their services. They're there for you, to support you. Their prices are fair. They're a broker, not a direct insurance company, meaning they can shop your situation to the best companies out there. And they're there for you. They're fighting for you. Check them out. If you're with any other company, I implore you to check out OREP. Go to orep.org. That's OREP.org. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Dustin Harris hanging out with my good friend, Mr. Greg Stevens. Welcome back, Greg.
Thank you, Dustin.
You said a couple of things before the break that I want to focus on. And the first is, you didn't use this term, but I'm going to use this term. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And what I mean by that is you talked about, some of these areas that have really increased dramatically in value are usually the ones that will also see the biggest decrease the fastest. And I think you mentioned investors, right? If investors see a hot market and they want to invest in that market, and there's a lot of speculation in that market, all of a sudden things change, the interest rates go up, whatever change it is that occurs, you see a change conversely in values and what we're seeing in the valuation side. I remember in 2012, I spoke to an appraiser who was in Vegas during the 2008, 2009, 2010 decrease. And he said that he was making an adjustment sometimes if it was 2 weeks, if the comp was 2 weeks old, he made a negative adjustment for time, right? Are we going to see a repeat of that, Greg?
I don't think it's going to be that severe, because in many of the markets, we have seen investors coming into the market. So I think what's going to happen is they're currently sitting on the sideline. The more reports that I'm reading and the data that I'm looking at, they're sitting back because now it's just like investors, right? They're afraid, if I buy stock today, is it going to go down tomorrow? Right. So if I invest in this real estate, is it going to go down tomorrow? Am I better off to hold off and let it go down and pick it up at a lower price down in, spring of 23 or, summer of 23 versus the fall of 22? And so we are definitely seeing that, but I don't think that we've had the amount of investors. If you remember the movie The Big Short.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That literally was what was going on back there, is that you had an individual, and they even cited, for instance, hairdressers that were buying 2 and 3 properties and as investment properties. And so, I was monitoring, I was still at the bank, so I was monitoring what was going on. And we saw the active listings in Greater Las Vegas Real Estate Board go from 7,000 to 16,000 within a matter of months, because you had all these people that purchased all these homes that for the past couple of years, riding that upward wave, could go into contract, and by the time the unit was ready, they could sell it, flip it. So they buy it from the builder and flip it and sell it to someone and make several $1,000s. Yeah. And so that's what was going on. But you had all these individual investors, unsophisticated investors, competing with the builders. Because you got the builder out there, they're still trying to sell inventory, and you got all these properties that are now dumping on the market because people can't afford them. So they're just letting them go back.
Right.
So that's when the REO market just went crazy.
Yeah.
And we started to literally see everything in free fall.
Speaking of REO, are we going to see that again?
We will see it again, but it will not be at the rate that we saw before. Why?
Yeah, why?
Because of the upward market trending if you think about it, most people that have owned their home for a period of 2 or 3 or 4 years have equity built up now.
Okay.
So if they lose their job or they have some life circumstance that is going to require them to get rid of the property, they have equity. They can put it on the market and sell it and pay off the loan and still have a little bit left over.
So just to make sure that the listeners are following you, somebody buys a home 5 years ago at 500,000. Right. Let's say it goes up to 650, okay, in that 5 years. And right. Now you're telling me that there's a downward trend, but it's not going to be back to that 500. It might be back to from 650 to 600, meaning they still have that $100,000 equity. And if they have a life change, they can still tap that. Even with these higher interest rates, it's still worth it for them to pull that out.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's what I'm hearing.
Right. Well, I think you're probably spot on because we did have such an increase. And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. One of the biggest differences we have today versus what we had in 2009, 2010, after the bubble burst in 2008, is up to 2008. And you've talked about it frequently here. The investors, there was so much speculation going on that, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, we haven't seen that the last few years. Now, don't get me wrong. There's investors out there. There's people like myself that are buying up short-term rentals that are investing in real estate. So there's definitely speculation going on, but not to the level that we saw in 2007, where people could come in with stated income and no interest loans and reverse interest loans and everything else that we had. We're protected a little bit this time versus last time. Would you agree?
I would agree with that 100%, Dustin.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
and the investors coming into the market today are very sophisticated. These are massive REITs. And so, they're sophisticated. Whereas in the past, when we had that market meltdown in 2008, leading up to that, you had these unsophisticated individual investors that had absolutely no cushion with which they could absorb even a couple months mortgage payments.
Right.
So that's what exacerbated that market. And I'm not seeing that in this round.
I agree. I agree completely. I think there's a lot of investors that have taken the wait and see approach for sure. But again, they've been smart about it. I will tell you this, Greg, from a personal standpoint, and I've bought a couple of investment real estate properties over the last couple of years. It was not easy, my friend. I mean, the process that I had to go through versus the process that I had to go through when I bought my first home, years ago was night and day difference, which was frustrating, honestly. But then I had to step back and go, well, at least it's not as easy as it was before. That's a little bit of protection, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so Greg, I want to talk to you about this term market expert. What does it mean to be a market expert? Meaning, and I hate to say it this way, but I think unfortunately there's a handful, and I'm just going to say a handful. I don't think it's the majority, but I think there's a handful of appraisers, younger, that maybe weren't taught the way that they should be. Maybe they're, the derogatory term that people say is, they're form fillers. Right. They're there to get a job done, but they don't necessarily do the background work. And full disclosure, Greg, I've been very clear about this on my program. That's the way I started. Frankly, that's the way I learned. Right. And it took me years to figure out what standard 1 was really about. Right. I was all focused on standard 2. Get that 1004 done, get it out the door, move on to the next one. Right. And so thankfully, some of us have learned a little bit, as time has gone on. But what does the future of appraisal look like? Meaning, when it comes to being the local subject matter expert on valuation, what does that term mean to you, and what would you encourage appraisers to be focused on right now?
Well, I think what appraisers need to be focusing on is gathering as much information as they possibly can. And I talk about being a sponge. So they're gathering as much information as they possibly can. They're reading more. They're, a good example is that most markets, the local publications will have a real estate editor who is commenting on what's going on in that market. Tracking that is important, but you also have these national surveys like AEI, for instance, National Association of Realtors, National Association of Home Builders. All of those are feeding into what is going on because you have the macro and then you have the micro, and those are all symbiotic when you look at how that impacts market trending. So this is also a good time now that the markets are contracting and appraisers are not working the 18-hour days, 7 days a week that they were for a couple of years.
Right.
They can back off now and catch up on the CE that they have been missing on. They can take advanced courses. Some of them have never taken a statistics course in their life, right? They have an opportunity to do that. There's a lot of that out there available now. And reading more, the appraisal of real estate, going back and reviewing USPAP. Let me look at standard one. What are those requirements? Getting more familiar with it so they can do that. But at the same time, they're really paying attention to what's going on in that local market. They're looking at the trending. They're paying close attention to, the normal indicators, which are days on market. How many properties do we have in this market? How many did we have 6 months ago, a year ago? And, when they do their MLS searches, they should be all inclusive, especially now, because they want to be looking not only at what's active and pending and sold, they also want to look at what has withdrawn, expired, see if they are coming off the market and relisting. That's going to give you a very significant market information for them to use going forward.
Well, that honestly is super, super interesting to me, because I think that education is really where it's at. What would you say, Greg, to the appraiser? And I've had a few of them reach out to me over the last couple of weeks and months who are seriously considering another career. Would you have any advice for someone like that?
I think that we are going to be seeing that, Dustin. We're going to be seeing that for the older appraisers like myself. They're just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to hang it up and I'm going to retire. However, on the positive side to that, and I saw this when I developed my desktop appraisal back in 2012 and started doing podcasts, I was really targeting a younger entering market. But what I had is I had older appraisers that would reach out to me after that podcast. And they would say, you know what, I've been thinking of retiring, but if I can do a desktop appraisal and just sit at my desk and not have to be out there in the traffic and running a tape, I could continue to do this for a couple more years. And so that's going to open up the markets, because Fannie Mae made it very clear that they're really expanding the use and acceptability of desktops as well as hybrids. So in both of those scenarios, the appraiser is staying in their office using that information. So there are increased opportunities for appraisers. There's also, the inspection tools. There's, the inspection software that is being expanded, so they can also supplement, because some appraisers have actually done that. They've supplemented the appraisal practice by doing these 3D scans, if you will, right? That are being used for the third-party independent information that's being fed back into appraisers. So they can use their trainees to do that. And then on a positive side, we do have the acceptability of Korea. And so we're going to start seeing that come to market in probably 2023. So for those appraisers that are thinking maybe about hanging up their hat, if they take on a trainee and teach that trainee their practice, then they can schedule, less. They can what I'm trying to think of the word is they can lower the amount of activity that they are previously involved in.
Right, because they're delegating it to others. In
turn, I've had several appraisers that I've known that have reached out to me to assist them in designing a program where that's exactly what they do. They have a trainee. The trainee is ultimately going to take over their practice. So rather than get out of the business entirely, they have the opportunity to extend, some of them being family members. But now we're starting to see where, particularly with the pressure on diversity, we're starting to see that we have outside of the family, we have the trainees coming in the supervisory model, as well as with Korea, and we'll probably see that sometime in late 2023. But they'll have the ability to work with the trainee through that Korea program and get them as a force multiplier.
Well, that sounds optimistic to me, my friend, and I love that. I love that. I think there's a lot of appraisers out there who are wondering about this changing market, wondering about their future, and you've given some great hope to many appraisers if they will listen to your advice. And there's so many different ways to pivot. You're just a man of high optimism. Let's put it that way. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Greg, I really appreciate you coming on. As always, I'd love to have you back soon. You are one that just brings a wealth of knowledge, and the way you present it is in a way that dummies like me that can understand. All of my listeners are much smarter than me, but I followed everything that you said, and it was great advice. Can't wait to have you back, my friend.
Sounds like a plan. Looking forward to it.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.